So you've learned plenty about grilling meat and fish, hamburgers and hot dogs, but what about the rest of the meal? Too often, I think, people go into the kitchen, they do a lot of cooking in the kitchen, and they have to clean that up, and then they come outside, they cook outside, and they have to clean that up too. Why couldn't we just cook everything outdoors? I'm going to take this lesson to talk to you a little bit about grilling all kinds of vegetables. And the added benefit is that if you have a friend who comes over who happens to be a vegetarian, you're ready for that eventuality. What you see here is a nice selection of vegetables that I have over a charcoal grill. I'm basting them with a marinade that's nothing more than olive oil, lemon juice, garlic, and some herbs. I have some thyme and some parsley in here. And that marinade brings flavor. It also helps things not to stick to the grill. Before I started, I evaluated the heat of the fire by holding my hand over there. You need a pretty hot fire if you have small, tender vegetables. If instead you have larger vegetables that are tougher, the fire needs to be a little bit calmer, a little bit less intense. So let's see where we're at right here. I've got some peppers that are browning a little bit. I'm going to turn those over. Mushrooms. They are taking on some color. I want a little bit of juice to this fire, so I'm going to just manipulate the coals a little bit so that we get some more heat. Let's see how the onions are doing. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you're cooking vegetables is many of them have a lot of sugar. The more sugar or starch, the faster they will brown. So onions are browning very, very nicely here already. I'm going to turn those over. The asparagus is so thin that I put it at a very hot part of the grill, which is to say if you hold your hand over it there, you can keep it there for 2, maybe 3 seconds, and then it starts to burn. This is so small and delicate that it'll cook quickly, and I want to make sure I get some browning on it before it needs to come off. Here are some pieces of fennel, likewise some parsnips. Both of those are far too tough to cook on the grill. They'll burn before they become tender. So in both cases, I cooked them ahead. Simple to do. So this fennel, which is browning really nicely, is basically cooked all the way already, and it just needs the savor of the smoke that comes off the grill and the marinade as well. The parsnips, think about parsnips for a second, lots of sugar. So find a nice quiet part of the grill for the parsnips. Potatoes. Potatoes really are so starchy that they brown quickly. They take too long to get tender, so I have had these cooked all the way. And just so I don't have to turn every single potato, I just put them onto a skewer. And we'll let those sit very happily. Some squash. Let's see how that's doing. Still hasn't begun to brown. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to season some of these vegetables with salt and pepper. I know I did not have it in my marinade. And while we're waiting, what I'd like to do is start another dish. I'm going to cook some eggs. Maybe you've had shirred eggs before. Oftentimes it's done in a dish. Instead of shirred eggs in a dish, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own dish, and that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be a pepper, and it's pretty simple to do. Find yourself a pepper that has some flat sides on it, because ultimately we want this to sit on the grill. And then with a nice sharp knife, cut it in half, and with a paring knife, I want to clean away the membrane on the inside and the seeds and create a little boat. That's what it looks like right there. I'll do it one more time. Just a little boat. And the idea is that we can create a container to cook some eggs in. So I'm going to find a spot on the grill for these eggs. Let's see if this is maybe not a good spot for them. Right over here on the edge, let me move the potatoes over. I'm going to turn these mushrooms, which are just starting to brown a little bit. I want to point out a subtlety to you. When you pick up this skewer and begin to turn it, notice how that last mushroom doesn't want to turn. The answer to that problem is to put a second skewer. So use 2 skewers like this, and that way, when you turn it, everything turns the way you expect. It can be very, very frustrating if these things start to spin on the skewers. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put a little of this marinade on the second side. I'm going to look in on this beautiful asparagus, which is browning really nicely over the hottest part of the grill. Onions, some people put a skewer through the onions to hold them together. I actually like it when they turn into a little tangle. I think it looks great on a plate, and it tells a little flavor story. The fennel is just about where we need it to be. Likewise, the parsnips and these squash. Nice grill marks on the first side, and so I'm going to turn those over. So your job up front is to decide if the vegetables you are cooking are tender enough to cook from raw, and if not, how do I need to pre-prepare them, make them unnaturally tender by blanching or poaching them first so that later on I could put them on the grill and finish them there. The other thing you need to decide, just take a look and make sure that those vegetables that are very small go on a hot part of the grill, and those that need a little bit more time, a cooler part of the grill. Already here, I'm feeling good about this asparagus, so I'm going to pull it from the grill. Every once in a while, something falls between the cracks, and that's you paying penance to the gods of grilling. The fennel looks very nice. I'm going to pull that off the grill as well. The secret to this, if there is a secret, is that we took some time to evaluate the heat of the fire. And as I said before, if I put my hand here, 1, 2, 2.5 seconds, I had to move it, otherwise I was going to get burned. That's a hot part of the fire. Over here, 3, 4, 5 seconds, moderate fire. Anything more than 5 seconds is a pretty delicate fire. So the fennel comes off. I'll give this parsnip just a little more time and move it to a hotter part of the grill. It's telling me it doesn't mind the heat there. So I cleared a little area right here so that we could put these peppers on. And let me show you how we're going to do it. First, I'm going to put a piece of foil on there. Next, I'm going to put these little collars, also made of foil, and in each of those collars, I'm going to put a piece of pepper. On the bottom, there we are. On the bottom, I'm going to put some cheese. This is Gruyere cheese, grated nice and fine. And in each of those pepper shells goes an egg. There's one. There's two. And number 3. I'm going to season them both with salt and pepper, or with both salt and pepper. Sometimes I will put a leaf of basil underneath the egg, or maybe a little crumble of bacon, or a sage leaf or two. And then finally, what I'm going to put on the top This is creme fraiche. If you don't have creme fraiche, cream is as good. I've seasoned it with garlic, salt, and pepper. And just to protect those eggs a little bit, I'm going to put some of this cream over the top. Now, it's going to take a while for these to cook, and the way to assure that they cook more readily, first some cheese over the top here, is to create a little oven. And I've got an oven all worked out here. I think you'll find it kind of an intriguing solution. The oven is basically this bowl right here, this stainless steel bowl that I'm going to turn upside down, not before I make some room, turn upside down on the grill, and underneath then will be our peppers cooking away very, very nicely. You'll notice if you put your hand here, already it's starting to get hot. It's probably going to turn into a 300 or 400 degree oven very, very quickly. All right, it's time for us to remove some of these vegetables. Onions coming off. Now, this for me is a meal, just as it is. Beautiful color on the potatoes. These squash, which were just about done earlier, now I can guarantee you are done. When I see squash and fennel together on the grill, I am transported to the south of France. These peppers will provide a nice little splash of color. Beautiful. And one lone parsnip to stay behind. So that's vegetable grilling 101. It's pretty simple to do. The next step is that I want to create 3 very distinct garnishes, and I think they'll be familiar to you. We're going to begin by arranging some vegetables on each of these plates. One of the challenges with doing this is you will want to play around with the presentation for a long time. And whenever I'm tempted to take too long, I'm reminded that Truman Capote said he never ever finished a book, they just took it away from him. And I think sometimes people need to take these things away from me. Let's put some of these onions here. All right, 3 beautiful platters of grilled vegetables. And let's not forget the orphan over here. There. Okay, I'm happy with those vegetables. As they are, they would be fine. A little sprinkle of parsley over the top, and that would be great. But take a look at what I've got here. I've got 3 very distinctive garnitures. One inspired by Italy, one inspired by France, and one inspired by Greece. So take a look. This is going to become Italian vegetables, and on it, I'm going to sprinkle some cherry tomatoes. I'm going to tuck in there a couple of beautiful pieces of fresh mozzarella cheese. And the heat of those vegetables will begin to soften that cheese. I'm going to sprinkle on pine nuts as though we were making a little pesto here. Here are basil leaves. And I'll just cut it into big ribbons. And we'll sprinkle that over the top. And then finally, Parmesan cheese. So there's one preparation. Here's another. This is feta cheese, which I'm going to sprinkle on here the way you might see it in Greece. And then we're going to put some dill on these vegetables. And a little squeeze of lemon juice, and that's good to go. If you want, you can leave a half a lemon over here in case someone wants to add to it. And then finally, I took and created a little French dip, if you will. This is cream, and I added some lemon juice to it, and as soon as you do, the cream thickens up, almost to the consistency of sour cream. I flavored it with mustard, dill, seasoned it with salt and pepper, boom, that's it. You can see how thick and delicious it's gotten. That's just from the lemon juice. And I don't want to hide the vegetables too much, so I'm going to put it around the edges. And then I think a little bit of parsley over the top. And what you've got then is one batch of grilled vegetables that was turned quickly into three very distinctive preparations. Now, over here on the grill, let's have a quick look-see. I'm going to open up my oven, move that forward. This needs just a little bit more time to cook. But imagine for a second that you had a platter of vegetables like that, and you add to it the baked or the shirred eggs in a half of a pepper. For me, that's a meal, a light summer meal, a nice luncheon item, maybe even a brunch item. So as soon as these are done, we'll take these to the table. So these eggs have been on now for about 15 minutes, and let me just move this away. Be careful you don't burn yourself. That bowl is very, very hot. You can see that these eggs are just set. And one of the great things about outdoor eating is that you can, if you like, present things on a board. And that's what I'm going to do here. We'll get a little carryover cooking from these eggs so they don't have to be rock solid. And then I'll take them over here. I'm going to put just a little bit of basil on there. We've got our Italian grilled vegetables. One word of caution, oftentimes people love to take balsamic vinegar on anything Italian and anoint it. My feeling, as much as I love the flavor, is that it looks a little bit like motor oil poured all over your food. So put this on the table, but don't pour it over your food. I think it looks better like this. Here's our French-inspired vegetables with a tarragon and mustard cream, and finally, Greek grilled vegetables with feta and dill. This, I would say, with the eggs, is a beautiful light summer luncheon. Go to the grill and see if you can make it look as good as that. So I'm going to show you three more sides that come together very, very quickly, and I think that's what you want when you're grilling. Nobody likes to stand over the heat for a lot of time. We're going to grill some corn. I'm going to grill corn on the cob. We're going to shuck it. We're going to pull the husks back, but I'm going to leave them on almost like a little handle. When you're buying corn, obviously the smartest thing to do is to buy the best corn you can, full kernels. If you want more full corn flavor, yellow corn tends to have a fuller corn flavor. White corn tends to be a little sweeter, and now there's hybridized versions that have both yellow and white on any cob. Anyhow, once you get it all cleaned up like this, the suggestion I'm going to make is that you come over to the grill and you put it directly onto the grill, the way you see right here, and you let it begin to char. I'm going to set this one down, but these two are cooked all the way through. Now, this is a trick that I learned on the streets in Mexico. What they do there, and it's absolutely brilliant, is they take mayonnaise and they roll this corn in mayonnaise. And that flavors it certainly, but also it makes it a little sticky. And that stickiness is just what you need for the next step, which is, let's season it with a little bit of cumin. A little bit of cumin here. I'm going to turn the whole thing over. A little bit more cumin. And then here is cotija. This is the crumbly, salty cheese that they use in Mexico on their cooking. This is an aged cheese and very, very salty, so it lends a wonderful savory flavor to this preparation. And again, we'll sort of roll this around and make sure that there's cheese on all sides. And then finally, I'm going to put it onto a plate. I'm going to make sure that there's plenty of cheese on there. And sometimes I simply sprinkle it with a little bit of cilantro. But oftentimes what people will like is a little varietal chili powder, just to give it a little spice. Or if you have a favorite hot sauce, that could go on as well. And then to your taste, you may like the idea of just a quick squeeze of lime over the top. That corn sits pretty much unattended on the grill until you're ready to eat it. And then I would have everybody help you, which is to say they dress their own corn. All right, let me set this aside. And I'm going to clean up just a little bit. And then I'm going to show you two more preparations. One of them is going to surprise you a little bit, I think. Here is a bowl of Swiss chard, quite a bit of Swiss chard actually. This leaf on the top still has in it the rib, and what I typically do is I take a knife and I just cut the ribs out because they tend to be a little bit tough. And so I'll set that aside. Now this is a lot of chard. Be a little bit careful about not over seasoning it, because once it cooks, it will melt down into a much smaller quantity. So here's what I want you to do. Put a little olive oil on here. Good. Put a little bit of chopped garlic. Put some salt. But think about it, portion size. This is probably 3 portions, so don't overdo it with the salt. And then pepper or pepper flakes if you like that idea. We're going to take the tongs and just toss it so that the oil coats all the leaves, and then just come over to the grill and put it right onto the grill, just the way you see it here. And spread it out. Initially, it will begin to wilt. And then in spots over a hotter coal or a hotter fire, it will begin to char just a little bit. In either case, it will taste delicious. It takes about 45 seconds to cook. I learned this trick in a restaurant that had ribs on the menu that were so popular that the guy on the grill was always putting out ribs. They needed a vegetable to go along the ribs, but the only equipment they had was the grill. And so they came up with something like this that could be grilled. Periodically just come in and turn the whole thing top to bottom. What's going to surprise you is that this huge bowl of chard will wilt down to probably 3 portions. Already it's probably half the size it was before. There's the bowl we're going to put it into. And while this finishes cooking, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the last dish I want to make. I've got here some portobello mushrooms, and they are nicely grilled. I marinated them, and I've got one with a little cheese over the top. From your perspective, and from mine both, you have to admit this looks an awful lot like a hamburger patty, and so we're going to treat it exactly the same way as though it were hamburger. So let me show you what that looks like. Here is all of the ingredients that I put into this marinade: sage, thyme, mustard, garlic, oil and vinegar, and then a little bit of hot sauce. And I created that marinade, and just so that this mushroom is a little bit brighter looking, I'm going to take and scrape the gills out. A portobello mushroom, you may not know this at the end of the day, is nothing more than an overgrown cremini mushroom. So this is a mature cremini mushroom. As mushrooms mature, the gills tend to get darker. And so if you don't want a preparation that looks sort of dark and inky, you can just scrape those gills out and marinate that mushroom in everything that I showed you right here. All right, have a look. I think we have everything we need from this chard. As soon as I begin to see a little bit of charring, not charting, but charring, that for me is enough. There'll be some carryover cooking, but I like that little smoky flavor that comes from charring. So now it's not a bad idea just to, this is what I want right here, just to evaluate the seasonings. We still have the luxury of going back and adjusting the seasonings. I want to offer this caution to you again. That big bowl sort of opens the door for you to season it pretty heavily, but this is what it looks like when it's done. You don't want to put too much salt in at the beginning, because if you do, you can expect it'll be over-seasoned after it's wilted down. Better by far that you under-season it up front, and then when you get to this point, you can always add a little bit more salt. All right, one last thing. I showed you my portobello mushroom burger. I don't need to show you how to build a hamburger. I'm going to take this patty, it's actually a mushroom, not a patty, and slide it right on there. If you like the idea of a quarter pounder or a Big Mac, something like that, you know, 2 patties, 2 all beef patties, 2 all mushroom patties. And then I'm going to take and put the lid on. And I think we could do worse as an accompaniment for this burger than just a little bit of this great chard. So there you have it. 3 things. Together, I think they make a beautiful meal. We started out saying we were going to cook sides, but this has moved beyond sides. This is a meal in its own right, a meal that any vegetarian would be tickled pink to have their hooks into. And I think you can take all of these ideas to your grill, and if you do, your cooking will be better for it.